Welcome to the Wake Up Protocol. I am your host, Nadja Haldimann, and together we're having life-changing conversations with real people about spiritual awakening and the transformations that follow. We're mapping the messy path of awakening so you can go further, faster, and feel a little less alone along the way. For this episode of the Wake Up Protocol, we're joined by Hilary Hahn, a spiritual mentor, intuitive artist, and mother who's built a life and business rooted in creativity, devotion, and trust in the unseen. In this conversation, Hilary shares how her path has been shaped by synchronicity, how magic shows up in everyday life, and what it really means to align your work with your soul's calling. We talk about the power of art as medicine, the courage it takes to simplify, and why honoring your natural rhythm is a strategy all its own. Whether she's guiding clients or tending to her own creative fire, Hilary walks the path of embodiment with grace and honesty and invites the rest of us to do the same. I'm so grateful to share this conversation with you. I hope it stirs something true and beautiful in your own journey.
Being on this path of spiritual awakening, which I think we're kind of all on a spiritual awakening throughout our lives, but there are definitely these pivotal moments where things start to change, things start to shift, things start to happen. And I think that I started to really be able to see myself more accurately, like who I am in the world. And I think before I was just going through life, we have all these different labels that were either put on us or that we adopt ourselves, these identities that are like, okay, this is who I am to this person, right? And what happened is the veil, or I was talking to Nadja, the layers of the onion or the opening of a lotus flower started one by one, just coming open. And I have a couple different experiences that I feel like really were the start of that.
Hilary Hahn, welcome to the Wake Up Protocol.
I'm so happy to be here.
So good to have you here, Hilary. I was really excited to get you on the show. Before we dive in, I'm curious, what's lighting you up right now in the world, in your work, or in your heart?
Right now, I have been returning to my painting practice using earth pigments. And so that is something that is really sparking a lot of joy in my life. My Friday afternoons and my weekends in my art studio, painting things that I see out in nature, landscapes. So that's bringing me a lot of joy right now. I would say that's my top thing right now.
It sounds so perfect. Doing things with organic materials with your hands, getting off screen, that's something that would light me up too.
What's coming up for me, and it's funny because my daughter right now is in this forest school with my niece and my sister-in-law. So yeah, just really loving the fact that we're spending more time out in nature. I'm curious what you were saying about the earth pigments. What is that?
So actually, the funny thing is I have one sitting on my desk. So
perfect.
Down at it. But I started painting. I was always using organic materials, natural dyes to create. I used to have a textile line where I designed fabrics from natural materials. And when I wanted to go back to my painting practice, I was trying to find ways that I could work with more like eco-friendly paints and paints that weren't plastic-based, which is a lot of acrylics are plastic-based for longevity. And so I was just exploring and experimenting with different materials. And I came across, I'll just show you this little jar that happens to be sitting on my desk, but it's a French mineral pigment. It is extracted from the earth. And so that's what I've been really enjoying when I want to unplug. I find art very meditative, like a spiritual practice for me. And so when I want to unplug, feel connected to nature, then using these earth pigments has been really exciting.
Oh, I absolutely love that. So I'm really curious to dive deep too, in your process. So when you're going out in nature, you kind of intuitively finding a landscape that really speaks to your heart and then just kind of setting up shop there, kind of walk us through what that looks like.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So I live in the heart of LA. I'm right east of Beverly Hills. So I'm in the city by all the big art museums. So that's a source of a lot of inspiration. But I'm also super sensitive to energetics like traffic lights, the buzz of the city. I make it a point to go out in nature once a week where I do different rituals, earth-based practices. And often I'm just like taking a photograph of something that I see, because as much as I love to paint plein air and do all that out in nature, it's a lot. I'm a mom. That's a lot of stuff to take out there. So unless I have a week where I know, I could just be doing that and exploring that, I typically take pictures of the experience and then I use those images as reference when I'm working in my studio. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I remember in my old painting days going out in nature, and it's just such a beautiful thing to take in nature and then representing it again with your paints. I love that.
I know, Nadja, when I met you, you were painting those beautiful river rocks and you were doing these meditative paintings on river rocks. So, yeah.
Yeah, the rocks. So many different canvases we can paint on. It's just incredible. The creativity never stops when you start looking for the next and just allowing your heart to kind of guide you there. I'm curious, on a scale from 1 to 10, how intuitive would you rate yourself?
So the funny thing is, if you'd asked me this question maybe 3-4 years ago, I would have probably said like a 5. And now I realize it's more like a 9 or a 9. I'm not going to say 10 because I'm sure that there are mediums, there are psychic channels that channel more so than me. But what I realized I was doing when I was working with these natural materials and doing these meditative practices, I realized that I was opening a channel actually. And I started to get intuitive downloads where now, oftentimes, so there's a form of being psychic that is called direct knowing. And I didn't know that term. So I'm not necessarily seeing visions. I'm not necessarily hearing. I know some people hear things. They hear words. They hear messages. For me, I have a direct knowing. And oftentimes what that looks like is I'll meet somebody. I'll ask them a question. And I'll know what they're going to say as the answer before they say it. So that's just one example of that direct knowing. And I think that the more that we become aware of this intuitive channel, then we can start to work with it and we can start to do practices like meditation. We can start to open it up. Have you ever experienced that?
It's really interesting that you're sharing this because there's people who can channel things and I've never really had that. And I'm always like, I wish I had that gift and it's just not quite there. But I do have other ways of intuiting and channeling things in a way that it's not as direct as you're explaining. Sometimes when I sit next to a person or even when I touch them, all of a sudden I see an entire landscape, just like there's like a movie playing. It's like I see the city that, I don't know, maybe there's Star City or something where they're from. And I don't know where it comes from, but it's just there. And I'm going to share one more story here. Sometimes when somebody's literally calling me in, I just go there and do that. There's no energy around it. There's no aha moment. I just do it. And then they're like, oh, I called you in. And I just happen to call them or walk out the door or something. So for me, I'm starting to realize channeling is actually not forcing myself into it. It's just trusting and then doing what just naturally happens. And somehow everything is aligned.
Yeah, like following those nudges, right? Like when you get a nudge, following that and not questioning it.
Yeah, I'm really curious because you mentioned like 3 or 4 years ago, maybe you would have rated yourself like a 5, but then over time you become more and more sensitive. I'm super curious to know what for you has led to this beautiful kind of opening to this channel. It's kind of tipping your head beyond the veil and increasing your capacity. I think claircognizance is the direct knowing.
Yeah.
So I'm super curious to know more about that.
Just like being on this path of spiritual awakening, which I think we're kind of all on a spiritual awakening throughout our lives, but there are definitely these pivotal moments where things start to change, things start to shift, things start to happen. And I think that I started to really be able to see myself more accurately, like who I am in the world. And I think before I was just going through life, we have all these different labels that, were either put on us or that we adopt ourselves, these identities that are like, okay, this is who I am to this person, right? And what happened is the veil, or I was talking to Nadja, the layers of the onion or the opening of a lotus flower started one by one, just coming open, just coming open, just coming open. And I have a couple different experiences that I feel like really were the start of that. And at first, I thought it was my yoga teacher training because I practiced yoga for 22 years. And finally, I was like, I'm going to do a 200-hour training. Then I was like, I'm going to do a 500-hour training. I'm not a big athlete or anything like that. I really just love to meditate. And I love to bring my attention into my body, into my physical experience. And what actually spawned my yoga teacher training was becoming a mom. So I have an 11-year-old, or he's almost 11. I've been calling him an 11-year-old now. But I think that motherhood was a really big initiation for me because it was like a mirror. Like everything that was happening with my son was showing me who I was as a person, right? Sometimes we don't really see ourselves until we have this. I also was telling Nadja, I saw it in my dog, my beloved rescue dog, Max. When we adopted him, he had high anxiety. He was one of those dogs that had separation anxiety. So when we would try to leave the house, he would charge the front door and just literally throw himself at the front door. And we were going, oh my gosh. We had a 4-year-old at the time. We've got this rescue dog. And suddenly I was in a lot of chaos. Our life felt very chaotic. And that's, I think, what inspired me to go and do my 200-hour yoga teacher training. And I look back, I'm like, that was pretty cool of my husband to pick up the extra weight and responsibility and let me go and meditate for 3 hours on a Saturday and a Sunday.
Amazing.
That's pretty awesome, right?
Yes.
But I really needed it. And, when you pour into yourself, it helps you have that spaciousness to become the anchor that now I feel like I can navigate calm in chaos. I can literally center myself and anchor myself and find calm through really chaotic moments, which we all experience.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Yeah, that really speaks to my heart, especially when you're saying how that kind of initiation into motherhood. I mean, things become chaotic. It's like your subjective well-being goes down, your body feels miserable, you're tired all the time, your relationships are dysfunctional. It's like you're just trying not to lose your shit.
Exactly.
But then what's interesting is at the same time, and based on so many people that we've talked to, it's during those times of initiation that chaos reigns. That's when typically these kind of channels open up and you become able to see yourself kind of from a third person perspective and see the parts of yourself that are not necessarily you, that they're sort of, labels that have been imposed upon you. It's really incredible. Something you shared was for your business. It's like seeing how you've become a healer through the lens of your son. I'm super curious to know more about that.
Absolutely. I'd had a couple businesses. I had done interior design for a while here in Los Angeles. And I had also had a blog and I'd been teaching art for many, many years. And what I realized is all of these different businesses where I was really just trying to create more beauty in the world and really just trying to help people find their creative power and return to their essence, right? I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. I was like a natural healer. And a lot of times on my retreats, I'll attract these women that are light workers. My last retreat in San Diego, we had 4 nurses attend the retreat. And I was like, wow, why am I calling in all of these nurses? And I never felt so lit up after a retreat. There were 16 people, and I just felt like I really was able to share my gifts, my healing gifts. And what I realized was that I'm a natural healer. Like I've been a healer helping people to align. I channel nature energy, and I use it a lot with my son, helping him to find calm whenever he might be feeling anxious or whenever he's working through something difficult, right? And we've had just regular experiences that we've had to navigate where he's had to be resilient in school or with friendships, and just lending that healing power, which I also got a Reiki initiation. And so then the Reiki was just the next expansion of that. And when he was younger, I would do Reiki on him, and he was really into it. Now he's a little more socially conditioned by the outside world and what his perceptions are. And he's starting to have stronger opinions on what he thinks is real and not real. But I definitely find that I'm an energetic healer. And to attract people that are also energetic healers.
So beautiful that you discovered the gift inside of you, being a healer, and turning this into the offerings for the world. You're so needed in this time right now, Hilary. I'm so glad you stepped into your purpose and you're doing this work.
Yeah, it's been really fun. And I've loved just knowing you over the years, seeing you now out in nature on this incredible island, and just seeing the work that you're doing with people and spiritual awakenings, I think is just so needed. And I'm excited to see more people stepping into their own powers through initiations. Usually the initiation is like the catalyst, right? Because a lot of times as humans, we don't want to change. We don't wake up and say, please initiate me today, right? Unless we're very forward motion and free. We actually have these struggles, and then the struggle becomes the reason that we seek out the tool. And so for me, my spiritual mentor was offering a Reiki mentorship, and I just gone through the yoga trainings, and I thought, okay, let me explore this. Let me experience this and see if this could add to my toolkit. And just to go back to your question, Colin, about why I would rate myself a 9 or a 10, I'm in a group of Reiki healers, and they're telling me that once you become activated, you start to have these claircognizant, direct knowing. And the more that you work with the Reiki, the more that you kind of sharpen that. And that's something I didn't know was a side effect of Reiki, but it's become really clear that it is, because they've only intensified over the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm curious because you mentioned you're working with a community of Reiki healers too. So I'm curious if working together amplifies the energy.
So I had an experience. So one of my first international retreats was called the Dream Retreat. It took place on a Greek island, and I was completely divinely guided there through a series of what would seem like random events, but were in fact synchronicities. And I had a friend, Paulina, who's a spiritual mentor and a healer. She does breath work, yoga. So she came on the retreat, and she was leading these incredible breath work and yoga sessions. And I remember laying in Shavasana at the very end of the practice, and she turned on this music. And I had this moment where I felt like my entire body was levitating off the ground and spinning around space in 3-dimensional. Like, I could only describe it as this out-of-body experience. And then afterward, I asked her, I said, what are you doing in that practice? Like, that was so incredible. And she was like, oh, well, the music, the track that I was playing was some Reiki infused track. And so I find that when I receive meditation from other energetic healers, whether it's Reiki or pranic healing or different modalities, I feel the amplification of the energy and have these really unusual experiences.
Wow. And so when you're having those experiences, is it a pretty visual experience when you're in meditation? Or to your point about claircognizance, is it you're felt sensing that it's happening, experiencing yourself out of body in a weird transcendent spatial sense? Or how does that?
Sometimes it is spatial, like almost a remote viewing. I have like an early experience in my life when I was like 5 or 6, and I remember remote viewing myself. I haven't had a lot of those experiences, but that's how I could describe it. Like feeling like my body was kind of in a different place in space. So that's been really interesting. I had another one right after my Reiki activation. And I had a moment where my dog that we rescued, Max, he was my little spirit dog. I always say he was mine. And then the next dog that we have is like totally my husband's, even though I love her a lot. She's just totally my husband's little daughter that he never had. But Max is my spirit dog. And he was only with us for 3 years. We rescued him later in life. And his anxiety melted away after the first 2 to 3 months, which was amazing. We really worked with him. We really worked with ourselves because we had to change the way that we were showing up in the world as a family. The pack, right? We're a pack as a family, to use that dog kind of metaphor. And when he passed away, I was wrapping up my Reiki training. And my mentor pulled a tarot card for everyone in the group. Mine was from this beautiful Earth Warriors deck, which I really identify with because it's all about nature and has these beautiful paintings as images. And it was a person, and there was a white dove on the head. And the card was called Hearing Truth. I said, what does hearing truth mean? My ears are open, obviously. I'm hearing things. What am I not hearing? And it's that pulling back the layers of the onion, or the opening of the lotus flower. Even though I was hearing, am I really, truly hearing with accuracy what's happening in life? That card came up for me, by the way, the next 3 pulls. It's like, okay, this is clearly a spiritual message. My dog passed. And I was out, started receiving messages, what I would call messages from the other side. And little things started happening that week that let me know that he was still communicating with me. He started communicating through the electricity in our house, through a delivery from the postman, which was extremely surprising. And then I was out in my garden. This is where I do a lot of my meditative practices in our backyard. And I looked up, and I felt there was a column of energy coming out of the crown of my head. So I would say that's, again, part of the channeling. I looked up, and inexplicably, there was a column of white doves, actual white doves, flying in a circle around my head about 20 feet up. That was that image. And there's no explanation. I've never before or since seen white doves flying in LA. And they were in a holding pattern, just flying there above my head. And so I think when we start to become open to having these, I call it the magical in the mundane, these magical experiences in our everyday lives. I could have said, oh, that was a flock of doves that somebody released from a wedding. My rational mind could have tried to find a logical reason why that happened. But I know it was Max. I know it was my dog giving me a little visit, the animal kingdom, giving me a little sign.
I love how you're talking about these synchronicities, and people start paying more and more attention to those synchronicities. I wonder what else you have to share about synchronicities and your relationship to them as you're increasingly stepping into your purpose in this world.
I love this question. They are still surprising to me because my logical mind is very powerful. I want to find a reason why for things. I can't explain how divinely guided we all are, the more that we start to notice. So a good example of this would be my first retreat I hosted in Greece. That was all completely divinely orchestrated. Then I decided I wanted to host one in Italy the next year because I was always kind of going back and forth between Greece and Italy. And then I said, okay, I'm going to do Greece and then I'm going to do Italy, right? So I was in Costa Rica, and this was before I had selected a venue. I hadn't found the perfect venue yet. I had some different villas that I was looking at. And I was in Costa Rica on a beach around New Year's. And I saw this man and his teenage daughter. And there's this giant iguana that ran up a tree. And I was like, wow, it's really interesting. And so I saw them standing there, and I just felt like, oh, I should go and just talk to them. And so I was like, hey, what are you guys looking at? And that's a huge iguana. And it happens to be, they were Italian. They were speaking Italian. And I was like, oh, you guys are from Italy? And they're like, yeah, we live in Milan. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm going to be hosting a retreat in Tuscany. And I had a couple people that had said they wanted to come. And I said, we're deciding between these two villas. So we hadn't selected the villa yet. And he's like, let me get my wife. So she comes over, and she happens to be the leading facial yoga instructor in Italy. I guess that's a really big craze over there. You basically do yoga and it's like an anti-aging process. So she happens to be the premier facial yoga instructor in Italy, and she was the first one doing it. And so she goes on my Instagram and she's like, let me just see what your vibe is like, what you're into. And she sees sustainability, eco-friendly, creativity, divine inspiration. And she refers me to a venue that has artist residencies, creative studios, a yoga studio, farm to table restaurant. Everything is biodynamic, eco-friendly. And I can guarantee you, I would have never found this venue. So she was like the perfect person because she even understood the retreat industry. Like she knew of all the different locations all around Italy that I could host something. And she said, this is the one. And that's where I ended up hosting the Inspiration Retreat in 2024. So just knowing that's not a coincidence, right? That she was standing there on the beach or that she was introduced to me. And that's how I follow my divine guidance. I don't question it too much anymore. I really know that this is real.
I love how you're putting yourself out there and you're allowing the universe to fill in the little empty spaces to get from point A to point B.
It's becoming more amplified to the point that I just had an intuitive channel at my retreat in San Diego, and she gave me a reading and she told me that now when a thought comes in, it's like amplified out my third eye into the world. So I have to really watch. I mean, that's yoga practice anyways, like really watching your thoughts because they're super powerful. So just even being aware that if you have an idea that you channel, you need to also be aware of what you're putting out in the world, as it can happen really fast.
So that's fascinating to me, being really careful with how you're sharing your energy with the world. Can you go a little bit more into how you're practicing that?
Totally. We all share this collective consciousness, right? We're all connected from our thoughts. And I think that whatever is being thought by the majority of people becomes this dominant impression in the world. And we see this with the news. Whatever's on the news, then that's what everybody starts worrying about. And not to say that we need to ignore the news, because I certainly like to know what's going on. I'm not going to bypass or try to not know. But I also have to choose where I direct my attention. And that's how I'm going to focus it and how I'm going to harness it and even how I'm going to take action. So just watching what I consume, what I'm thinking. Am I having super negative thoughts? If that's coming up, I mean, that's real, but then we get to choose the next best thought. We get to make some micro shifts, start climbing up the ladder. Our thoughts can become better and better and better. And sometimes we have to go get in the body, or we have to go like to a yoga class or go be out in nature, right? Because nature can transmute the energy. We can shift things out in nature. Nature can take and absorb a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm. You are mentioning a few tools.
Yes.
What are some other tools that you practice to help stay in that space?
I love a good morning ritual. And I like to meditate and journal in the mornings. I also like to watch what I eat. Like I took this awesome traditional Chinese medicine class last spring, and that really helped me to eat a little more healthy. But for myself, like what I can offer and what I do really well is my morning journaling practice. I'm going to show you my journal. And this is the super beat up one that just happens to also be on my desk. It's completely filled out, but it was my first one. It's called a manifestation journal, Manifest Your Dream Life in 90 Days. And there's morning pages and evening pages. And in the very beginning, I share 5 different ways to meditate because not everybody likes to sit and meditate. There's a walking meditation. There's guided meditation. There's a Reiki meditation that I linked to in a YouTube video at the very end of the journal. So I share these different ways to meditate. Some people need to be in the body to meditate, whereas other people can just sit and drop in and then start doing it for longer and longer. But I would say the short meditations combined with journaling, which I do almost like an automatic writing where you'd write. And I'd love to teach this in a workshop sometime. I haven't taught it yet, but you just start to write what is coming in for you. And then what's really fun is you can go back to it and you can see what came of this, what manifested, what wants to come through me as an individual out in the world. What do I want to share next? And so I do have a downloadable. That's the first 44 pages of this. I call it a return to your essence. And people can really drop in and see how that morning pages. And if you skip a morning, doesn't matter. If you skip an evening, doesn't matter. Just go back to it and you'll notice this compounding momentum from working with intention, like the power of having an intention, the power of setting an intention, and then the power of being open to seeing where you're at today or what's really coming up for you.
Thank you for sharing that. A lot of people talk about morning routines being really important just to set the tone for the day. So hearing you say that too just makes me want to have a bit more of a morning routine too. Also, the manifestation journal. That's something that you're publishing. Is that correct?
Yes. So that manifestation journal is on Amazon. I didn't know this when I created the journal because, like all things, I literally woke up one day in November 2022 and I was tired. I was like the end of the year and I channeled this journal. I realized it was the way I'd been naturally working with my clients. And I channeled it to give them a place to write and follow up with their evolution, like what they're doing and what they're creating. And you can go through this process for 90 days and you'll notice some really big shifts. That's one of the questions that you reflect on at the end of the journal. What's changed? What are you celebrating? What has shifted in your life? But I will give the link where if they just want to get started for 44 days, doing some micro meditations, that's a PDF that you can download as well.
Great. We will put the link in the show notes so everybody can download that, including myself. Maybe that's going to become my new morning practice. Thanks for that.
Yes.
And you are talking about how your life is shifting and other people's lives are shifting as part of that practice. And I am curious, how has your life shifted as a result of having those spiritual awakening moments?
I would say that I'm going through a big re-envisioning and reimagining of a dream. Sometime we planted the seed, right? Like 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And then we achieve a certain level or a certain part of that dream. And we've arrived, and then we think that we're going to go this way toward that bigger dream, but that bigger dream is no longer relevant to us anymore. So that's when it's a really scary moment because you're like, what's the next big dream? What's the next alignment? How do I realign with where I'm going? And so I realized about 1.5 years ago, the big dream used to be to get a bigger house in LA. We already have a house in LA, right? Get a bigger house in LA. And then it didn't feel that juicy or exciting to me anymore. It didn't really light me up. And so I had to get a new big dream. And sometimes you have to feel your way into that because it's not going to all automatically just appear to you like a vision. I had a dream in the night. I'm not a big dreamer, surprisingly. But that night I had a dream and I was in Mallorca, which is a Spanish island off the coast of Barcelona near Ibiza. And I was in the Spanish countryside. So I'm in Mallorca and I'm surrounded by the countryside and I'm at this like gorgeous retreat space that I've never seen before. And people are practicing healing modalities and people are receiving. And then I go around the corner and there's this big courtyard with a restaurant and the restaurant was very lively and there was music. And then I look and there was this huge art studio with these big windows and light filtering in and there were paintings everywhere. And then I woke up and I realized that was mine. That was my place, actually. And I don't know how it's going to all come together, but I know that there's going to be these little micro moments that I can embrace, like hosting a retreat in Mallorca or selling my work at an art gallery, like these different little points along the way that are going to guide me to that vision, the new vision. So I'm excited to see how it's all going to come together.
I love how you're just trusting the process and allowing the universe steering you along. Having known you for almost a decade at this point and watched your journey, it's been such an inspiration for me to see you do that. And every time you have an idea, you actually take action. You don't just let it sit. You actually say, oh, this is an idea. I'm supposed to put this into the world. And that is such a huge inspiration for me because I have a million ideas and then I only follow through with a few of them. And I'm sure you have a million ideas too.
I do. Yeah.
But then how do you decide which idea to actually follow through with and which ones to let go?
I love this question because I'm multi-passionate. I have so many ideas. We're always trying to vet out which ones are going to be the best or the most aligned. And so in the journal, every other page is daily actions and goals. And now I like to ask the question, does this action take me closer to this big vision? And that's why I really believe that having a vision of where you're going, it's a little bit like when I was in that year that I was like, I don't know what my next vision is. Then it's tricky because you don't know what the vision is. Then it's hard to know what the action is that aligns. And that's when you're going to be really doing the trial and error and testing and having faith and just letting things unfold for you, but then just really trusting those synchronicities when the universe delivers to you exactly what you were asking for, and sometimes even faster than you ever imagined. That is a confirmation that you're on the right track.
Thank you for sharing that.
I loved being here with you both today. I can't wait to listen to all the other guests and just hear, about the awakening that is happening on the planet right now. I think it's so magical and also really a deepening, right? A deepening into our truth as a collective. So I'm excited to listen to more.
What's coming up for me right now is just connecting to that vision that you had, the dream, and what that means for you. If you have a sense for feeling into that, if that's the next big dream that's coming up for you, what's most exciting about that for you?
Oh, yeah. The reason I think that it lights me up so much is this prospect to be like I felt after hosting that San Diego retreat with the 16 women. It was in January. It was called the Replenish to Rise retreat. And just this idea that I can be really sharing meditation, spiritual awakening, painting. I know that those are the gifts that I'm here to share, and awakening that in others and highlighting other people that are healers, that have their different modalities, having a farm to table restaurant, like that would just be completely in alignment with everything that I'm all about in life and conscious living. And so I think if I could weave those things together, that would be extremely fulfilling. And I don't know if it'll be in Mallorca or not. I don't know that, but I'm really excited to be divinely guided to that next big vision or that next big dream.
Yeah, it's so incredible because it just sounds like you're connecting more and more to what you said about finding the magic in the mundane. It's like filling every single gap and kind of leaning more and more intuitively into surrendering to what's most alive for you in the moment. So it's really beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
So from this place where you're at today, if you could go back in time and give a message to your younger self, what would you tell her?
Oh my goodness. Just like I think having trust and having faith in the moments that maybe it seemed harder, right? Maybe it seemed harder to be a unique individual with very different ideas functioning in the world. And just knowing that it's all going to make sense, it's all going to come together. I think that would have been really comforting. Also, just not being too afraid about what other people will think. I think we care. Like as humans, we care about what other people think because we need to function. We need to collaborate. We need to find a sense of community with other people. And just being more open to sharing my unique perspective on the world, because I think that the world needs more creative problem solvers, needs more unique perspective rather than us all trying to fit in with the dominant culture. Resonate with you both.
It definitely resonates deeply with me. You're a spiritual mentor, coach, retreat facilitator, artist, and you have some offerings. I would like to give you a little bit of time to share what those are, and we will definitely put some links in the show notes.
Thank you. Right now, my current offering is called Visionary Creativity. This is for spiritual business. And so I find that the business space can be quite strategic. This is a strategic program, but it also brings in spiritual laws into really expanding and following your dreams in business. And then I also offer soul journeys. I call it Awaken Your Magic. And it's where we go on a 10-week journey into different rituals and practices. And we work with my journal, and you set up your own soul aligned routines and rituals to really just deepen into greater alignment with what you want to create in the world. So those are my two most popular things. One is a business mentorship and one is a spiritual mentorship. And of course, my retreats, which my Mallorca one is currently sold out. It's in September, but I'm going to be taking a smaller group to Tuscany, back to the same space that we were in last year. And it's called the Inspiration Retreat. And this will be a retreat to reconnect to creative essence, to inspiration, so you can have that going in your daily life. So those are my most potent offerings right now.
Beautiful offerings. I'm excited for anyone who's going to be able to get in touch with you and start learning from you. It has been such a pleasure having you on the show, Hilary, and just walking this path together towards a more awakened future for humanity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hilary.
Thank you. I always learned so much from the questions. So thank you so much, both of you, for having me here. And I'll look forward to the next episode when it's out.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Wake Up Protocol. If you like what you heard, share this episode with 3 people who need to hear this message. And if you want to go deeper, head to thewakeuprotocol.com and sign up for our email list. That's where we share behind the scenes insights, bonus resources, exclusive invites, and the kind of guidance we only send to our community. And if this is the last thing you hear from us, all we'd like to say is keep going, trust yourself, follow your heart. Until next time, have a safe and happy journey.